because I've been thinking about too, because I talk a lot about on my Instagram about like, oh, you just fucking you got to do shadow work, like that's the thing. And if I look at my own life too, what's the one thing or the few things that have brought me the most transformation? It's the inner shit, it's the inner stuff. But I've also done a lot of these things in like, I guess, very orchestrated environments where it's like either going to retreat or you go to this fucking thing or you meet people or whatever it is, and it's like it's not practical to do that in your day to day and like always be going to retreats. Everybody's always going to fucking retreats or using plant medicine and all this stuff, which just isn't practical. And but that's one way of doing shadow work, but it's also like a popularized way of doing shadow work. But the fucking the best, most practical way to do shadow work is just what we just talked about now. Just feel whatever you're feeling, and that shadow is going to arise in the perfect times throughout the day, and it's I guess your choice to then lean into it or avoid it. You don't always need to lean into it because that could be overwhelming in the beginning, because there's going to be a lot of shit that you're feeling, a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension in your belly. Typically that's always where I notice it, in the belly. And just like, if you want to do some shadow work, well, there's absolutely going to come a time to tomorrow where you're going to feel some tension in your belly, and just like feel that. Without which I love this well that you said, is like without the need to feel it to remove it. Like there's no end game. There's no reason you're feeling it other than the fact that it needs to be felt. And there might be a timeline of like 125 hours of feeling a certain emotion that's going to be required for that to untangle and actually release. And so maybe that's 30 minutes here, 40 minutes here. And also not, obsessing, oh, but fuck, I gotta like go and do this thing, I gotta sit down and I gotta do this to like do this thing. No, you can do it in any moment. Even if you're on a work meeting and you're not talking, you can still be conscious of what you're feeling in your belly.
You can do it everywhere.
Awareness on that. While still, communicating, because it doesn't take it doesn't take any cognitive ability really to feel.
No.
It just takes awareness. But you can still use your cognitive ability to function on a work meeting or whatever. But it just put some of that awareness down here and just like feel it.
Yeah.
It's so practical. And it's just like now for me, I'm like, because that's one of the things that I've kind of realized is coming up until coming here, I've always had this idea that, I've done a lot of fucking shadow work and I have done a lot of these things. And I mean, I actually have done a lot of these things, like especially over the last 6 months in my own space, just like, I do a lot of like, I've done a lot of video vlogs where I've just like put the video on and I've just like talked to the camera, which is like a verbal way of journaling. And just like fucking sat there crying and just like fucking fully releasing on camera, and because it's helped me sort of just like, it's my own mirror. I made my own mirror basically. But
sometimes I was going to say, sometimes that form of processing, just like what you were talking about with the medicines or thinking that you have to do something really extreme to do any form of shadow work, it can all become like staged. It's like staged shadow work. And also how much of that is actually shadow work and how much of that is actually just you kind of mentally masturbating and like just selfing off your own pain. And it's the same with like, even though there's a type of processing that does kind of go on when you first start journaling and like video recording yourself, and you go through this like almost like a processing, but eventually to move into the body and just to keep it really simple and just to remain with the body and what happens moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. Not anything extreme, not when you're waiting in fucking line. Like when you're waiting in line and you start to get tense because you're like resisting reality as it is, that's your shadow, that's shadow work. And actually it's really weird because it seems really insignificant. But once you start, you know how everybody always says that saying, oh, it's the small things. It's always the small things. You in business, how much of business is getting loads of little fine details right, and then the big thing manifests. And in a way, that's what you're doing. You're like, throughout the day, you're just paying attention to the most tiniest, subtle, insignificant things and bringing your awareness to that. And then one of the things that we were talking about in like a shadow work sense, or a really emotional work sense, is actually that when you are with sensations, We mentioned ways that you can actually unhook awareness from thought towards sensations, which makes it easier to actually be with the sensate experience. And then we came up with a way to get closer to the sensations by asking them questions. Mm-hmm. And the two questions that we came up with was, when you are feeling sensations, and especially if it's pain or emotions like sadness, anger, rage, disgust, shame, I'm not good enough, all the ways that pain can express itself.
Or just there's something
or just
there,
there's something there, there's like resistance,
yeah.
There's resistance, or there's fear or whatever. But yeah, even if you kind of don't know its quality, but it just feels uncomfortable, then you can move into that space. And literally the two questions, super fucking simple. It's literally just, what's wrong? But when you're like saying that to yourself, it notice how my tone changes. It's like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
It's like it's a nurturing tone. It's an embracing tone.
Yeah.
You don't have to say that out loud, but you can just kind of say, that can just happen maybe even through thought form, what's wrong? And then actually the sensation sometimes can speak back to you through the form of thoughts like, I'm not good enough, which is what Carl was saying earlier. Like, I never get anything right. I get everything wrong. Yeah. And then the next thing that we said was, which is what Carl did, Carl said, it's okay. Like, and imagine, and that is like literally working through it's inner child work, shadow work. Yeah. Because that's the exact same way that a nurturing mother and father would deal with a child who thinks that it's like not good enough, or thinks that it's wrong in some sort of way, or who's afraid or is in pain. They would say, what's wrong? It's okay. And actually, when you start to do that with yourself, you actually become your own lover. You become your own source of compassion, love.
And you become unpenetrable, unfuckwittable. You just become a titan.
And you end up moving into all those aspects of yourself with love and compassion. And that's metta, which is a form of meditation, just loving kindness meditation. Whatever arises, you just love it to death. But that's really the only way to fully transcend that shadow is to love it. You cannot resist it, and
loving it is just accepting it.
Loving it is just embracing it, accepting it. But if you're trying to dissolve the shadow by going to these crazy extreme retreats, by like taking whatever it is that you take, or even just trying to bring something on, you're not really actually loving your shadow that way. It's almost like you're forcing it a little bit.
You want to get rid of the shadow.
You want to get rid of it in some sort of way,
And it's also become it's become popularized and it's become cool to do shadow work in these extreme ways.
Because then you look like you're more
you look like you're doing the work, you get social credits, all of that stuff. And not to say that it's ineffective for some people, that could be massive, and some people also can benefit from being in a space with other people and seeing other people go through it, which gives them permission to gives them their own permission to also lean into it. But it's like, on a day-to-day basis, and just like in life in general, it's like you will never reach a state of self-realization or enlightenment where that's not necessarily the goal either, but just internal peace. You'll never really arrive at internal peace and satisfaction with reality and life as it is if that's the only ways that you do the work.
Exactly.
It will never happen,
because you're missing out on the moment to moment to moment to moment experience. You're missing out on what does it feel like to be around your mum and dad. What do you feel when you're standing in line? What do you feel like when your car's been scratched? What do you feel like when somebody disrespects you?
Or you wake up 2 minutes late.
Or just all these different fucking things, the way that experience can formulate, and you resist, and suddenly you're angry, or you're sad, or you're this, or you're that, or you feel rejected or abandoned or ashamed or betrayed. There's all these.
That's the cue.
That's the path.
Somebody leaves you on red for 2 minutes and you find that slightly uncomfortable, and you start. That's the cue.
That's shadow
now
work.
Go into what that feeling is like. And if you really want to do the work, you just fucking sit with that, and you extrapolate that, and you really let that intensify, because that feeling is connected to a lot of past experiences. So it's almost like a little gateway into all the other times you felt that but ignored it. And so by just that one thing coming up, you can do the work of all the other times that you neglected that, which then can lead it into becoming sort of a bigger shadow work experience. Or if you got a busy day and you got a lot of shit to get done, then maybe just sit with that one thing that came there and then move on. Like, you don't need to fucking force it and like feel like you need to do everything all the time, which has been very present for me, because like I'm also trying to get shit done. I'm also trying to be
even if you're out of your routine, your routine, that what we're talking about here, you can actually just be with what it's like to what it's like in sensately to be out of your routine. What are the sensations when you are out of your routine? What are the sensations when suddenly things aren't going your way? And that's perfect. That's actually shadow work, because what's been revealed is your resistance patterns and also your emotional space as well, what it feels like in an emotional sense when things aren't going your way. And if you're able to approach that and be intimate with that and bring awareness to that, and then move through that in the same way that we were saying before. You don't always have to do inquiry. You can actually just be aware of the sensations and just notice and do nothing. You don't actually have to do anything.
You can continue on with whatever you were doing, but just putting some of your awareness there.
Yes.
And just being present to
it. And also having no desire for anything to change. That's like the most important thing.
That's the juggernaut.
The minute that you have a desire for a sensation to go away, you immediately reject yourself. That is a self-rejection right there. As soon as a sensation is arising and you say, oh, I want that to go away and change, you immediately become your own rejecter. You actually push yourself away every time you do that. And it's a really fucking sneaky thing, because you don't realize it, because we're taught to want to feel good, and every time we feel bad, move towards feeling good.
So you could be doing a lot of practices. You could be doing yoga, you could be doing meditation, you could be doing cold showers. But if it is coming from the place of, I'm doing this so I can avoid this other thing, it's actually not doing any benefit.
It's not. It's literally, it's a temporary relief.
It's a temporary relief.
Or it's a mask, or it's a solution. It's a solution to what you perceive as a problem, which is really just stuff that you really just need to feel and face.
It's really interesting. If like a kid came to the door right now, like if Miriam's daughter came to the door, I don't know how old she is exactly, I think she's like 5. If she came and she was crying and sad, and we gave her all these practices to do to not be sad, that's what we do a lot of times to ourselves. It's like, you could just say, oh, what's wrong? And then with genuine care, and she'll say, oh, I'm not feeling well, something happened, and we just say it's okay, and then she'll go back out and she'll play.
Exactly. It's such a quick process.
Because actually, in a way, when you feel the sensation and say what's wrong, it's the same thing to say I want what is. But it's a softer way to say I want what is. But actually, it's the same things.
You're basically just using a phrase with that compassionate energy behind it. The phrase, in a sense, as well, is like made up of love. When you say what's wrong, it's we've heard that millions of times. What's wrong? But like, we've heard that from our mother and father, and if you didn't hear it in a loving way, still you can still apply that compassion and apply that love, that loving energy into that, and then you can actually get closer to the sensations and stop rejecting them and stop trying to find a solution for them. Because no amount of solutions and anesthetics or health kicks and even practices, but even this is kind of a practice, but it's really, it's a practice that's not looking to solve.
And you're not really doing anything either, you're just being. You're just being more aware of your being.
You're not looking to solve any problems. It's like just feeling.
And you're like literally loving, because you're giving genuine compassion for the part that is hurt.
Yes,
and it wants to be heard. 100%. It's like, hey, I'm suffering down here. I'm suffering. Give it the attention.
All it wants, all those sensations want are your attention. They just want your. They just want your love, like they want they just want your love. That's like the easiest way to say it is they just want your love. And in a way, actually, all that is you want your love. Like it's just that you're wanting to your compassion, you're wanting your own love, basically.
This is the interesting thing, because you can't, like, it's a very difficult to sell this. Like you can't really make a business out of this.
No.
And so that's why everybody is caught on these wheels of going to retreats
this is
and
so
these
true.
practices because you can sell that.
Yeah, because it seems more special.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
And we perceive
something special.
and we think
Yeah.
that the answers to all this suffering is super complicated because we overcomplicate everything.
Yeah.
When someone says like, these are the 7 steps to achieve blah blah blah, it's like, of course there's 7 steps because it's got to be fucking hard. Like it's got to be a lot.
Yeah. But it's actually really simple.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean it's easy. Because it's not easy in any way, shape, or form. It's almost more difficult to do this than it is to go to a retreat, because when you're going to a retreat, you're going to a retreat, so you're doing something.
And you're
arriving. You're getting away from this other thing and like one step further towards the desired reality that you want to manifest.
And you can tell a story.
You can tell your friends.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting because this is where the reason why this doesn't sell is because it's not disassociation. And that hurts people's feelings and triggers people when you say that. But it's like the reason why this is hard to sell is because it's not disassociation.
Elaborate upon disassociation.
So disassociation, this is what ends up, what we were just talking about there, this is what a lot of these retreats end up becoming about. You're avoiding this work, you're avoiding your moment-to-moment experience, and you're making your journey about these specific moments where you absolutely fucking blow up or whatever it is that you do that are like, oh, that's the work. But actually, really, most of the time that's just happening because generally throughout, let's just frame it in a year, most of the time throughout a year, you may be doing some stuff, but a lot of the things that you do will just be just disassociating. Because if you are not moving into the sensate experience, and you are not just feeling sensations, and you are not moving into your wounds and your pain, you are disassociating, end of story. People won't like to hear that because they will have, their ego will have become so inflated about everything that they think they've done. They'll feel so special and feel like, oh my God, I've done all this work. I'm so advanced. I'm so spiritual now. I've cleared up so much shadows.
And the fact that that triggers them is just a direct reflection of the wound still being there.
Exactly, yeah. If the work was really done, you wouldn't get triggered by this. Some people might not receive this message, so they might just be like, it doesn't resonate or whatever, and that's fine. But it's like actually the real work is in those simple, small sensations that just arise moment to moment. And they can even be big. They can be macro sensations. You can have like extreme emotions arise. But actually the way to deal with that isn't to like through some sort of outside source. It's actually just through awareness. And then in that, moving into that with love comes surrender, comes grace. And that's actually how the energetic template unwinds itself. And actually opens up, and you free up tons of these energetic blockages that have been in the body for, you could say, years.
Dinner is ready.
Dinner. All right. That's kind of good timing. Nice.
Yeah, that was good.
That was good.
That was good. Boys. Yeah, that was good.